Hello, this is Dr. Rick Durst, and this is Christian Theology. I wanted to chat with you just a little bit about the theological research project that's due in this course. It's not the usual kind of research paper. It's actually a comparative paper where you line up two persons who have written books that are in opposition to each other about some core theological truth. You fairly and clearly identify what the strengths and weaknesses are for each position, and then you become a theologian. And in the final part of the paper, I want you to do theology yourself. Tell where you are at with reference to the biblical texts and concepts that relate to this. I don't want you quoting other people, it's just you doing theology. So those are the three parts of the paper. Now let me give you some examples. Let's suppose that you wanted to do some research on the doctrine of Christ. And John Hick, who became famous for writing a book years ago called The Myth of Christ Incarnate, has, so to speak, updated that to the metaphor of Christ Incarnate. And in quite a bit of contrast to that is Donald Blesh's book, Jesus Christ. So these two, John Hick and Donald Blesh, would be in opposition. That would set your paper up. Now the first part of the paper is explaining what the issue is, explaining why it's important and why you're interested in it, and then giving a little biographical information about your two authors. And then you launch in to the part that's about Hick, perhaps, and then the part about Blesh, and then you do the theological resolution in the back part. Or you might take just one book that has 5 views. This book edited by Chad Brand on the 5 views of Spirit baptism. And looking through these positions, read the whole book, but then choose 2 positions that are in contrast with each other. Perhaps the position of Larry Hart versus Walter Kaiser. Or you may have been worrying and wondering about Calvinism. This is a wonderful book, Calvinism, a Southern Baptist Dialogue, and it gives both positions. You may know that about 10% of pastors in the Southern Baptist Convention are Reformed. They're Calvinists. 90% are not. And there's a lot of discussion between those two sides. And this is a wonderful book, so you could give those positions relative to Calvinism, and maybe I'll just call it semi-Calvinism. Or you may want to do a project on the doctrine of the church. So Mark Deaver's 9 Marks of a Healthy Church gives a very forward evangelical presentation of the doctrine of the church. And you may want to take an emerging church book like Belcher's Deep Church. Now he's what we call a Reformed emerging church pastor, as opposed to a reconstructive church pastor like, say, Brian McLaren. Or you may want to use McLaren's book to give the contrast. You see, the point of the project is to create some tension, theological tension, and out of that heat, for you to develop your own theology. 2 other examples. Here are 5 views of church polity. Single pastor polity, plurality of elders polity, and so you can read through the book and then choose 2 authors. Last one, maybe you want to do something on eschatology, the doctrine of last things. Maybe it's the rapture, maybe it's heaven, hell, or the millennium and beyond. Premillennial, postmillennial, amillennial. Or here are 3 classic views among evangelical theologians on millennialism. And you can read the book and then pick 2 that you want to contrast in order to come to your position. I hope that's clear. The paper is 12 to 15 pages. And you can see in the syllabus when it's due, but it's good to make your selection early, and I'll want to know from you what 2 books you've selected because I must approve them. This is intended to be a very healthy, exciting project for you, so choose something you've always wanted to know something more about. There's a bibliography and suggested books that you might weigh against each other in the online material, so click on that and do your shopping. Thanks so much for being a part of Christian Theology.